there's so many things at play that I can't control, like how these are all, continuing to blend. It all just does so many interesting things on its own as it dries that I just have to be comfortable letting things be messy in certain ways. But that's really a freeing lesson because it lets me be comfortable with mistakes, but they're not mistakes, because if you let it be what it is, nothing's a mistake. If you kind of release your expectations of it and just appreciate what it is, and move forward from there. But yeah, so again, just adding more water. So you can tell when you're painting where it's dull. You can see it's kind of matte. Matte is not glossy, where you have this kind of shiny, glossy, you can see because of the way the light is reflecting off of it. That's still wet. So that's a good way if you're not quite sure how the paint will respond to what you're doing. That's how you can kind of gauge the dampness. For example, here, my water's dirty. Under better circumstances, that would be clear essentially, and then you can still see when it's tilted that difference in the sheen. See if I'm hoping this is coming off okay. From your angle, it's a little tricky for me to know, so I will find out in editing. Oh, we'll get colorful. We're gonna be crazy. So this is this magenta, which I love. I go through so many of them. And of course, is it too? Of course it is. So let's see if there's any left here. There we go. See? There's my little buddy there. So what I'm demonstrating is how on the damp part, pick up some water here. So if you feel free to wear gloves if you're not a messy hands person. So here I'm gonna get it even more wet. Where the canvas is already damp, you can see how the paint really spreads out. So it just does that automatically. But then, basically the same thing, so the same blop, 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 blop. These are art terms. That same thing over here, blop, 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 blop. You can see how much more clean these are. And so if this is the effect that you're going for, you're gonna have to wait for the canvas to dry. Just wait for that to dry, you'll get the effect you want. Both are great. They're very neat, and they look cool in their own ways, and they blend. So, it all works, but if you are going for a particular effect and you don't find that it's working, these could be some of the reasons that you might be finding that. All right, so let's see here. What can I make big and messy? So I'm bringing in just some matte medium. So again, that's this one. And I buy the 32-ounce one because I go through it a lot. But if this is something you want to try, there are much smaller, much smaller, and therefore less expensive ones. But also like, there's a couple different brands of those that work. So again, none of this is paid stuff. This is just my recommendations, and I like to tell you what works for me because I've tried a lot of different materials. So, all right. What I want to do is, so I have a very dark spot right here, and I want to lighten it up. So I'm just using, again, some of this very liquidy, but it's not the high flow, acrylic. And then what I'm wanting is a little thicker than that. So we're going to add a little of, nope, not that one. This one. So this one is, you can see, a much harder body paint. This is another one that's not very expensive. So if you're just wanting to kind of try painting a little bit, but you're, good investing in like a few colors, this is a pretty good brand to go for, that's not too expensive. And there's also these ones that I have found are pretty good. It thickens up the one that was thin, and it liquefies the one that was solid. That sounds not great paint-wise. But look how fun this is right here. It looks like frost almost. I'm gonna bring that up, see if it'll show, because it's so pretty. So yeah, there's this really interesting pattern just happening there from where the damp canvas is drying, intermittently. And just kind of the difference in paint viscosity or density, kind of creating those textures. So anyway, once this is, there we go. So this is the kind of consistency I'm looking for. Now, I'm just using my canvas as a palette, essentially, because I am very comfortable doing that. It makes total sense that if you're just kind of starting out and that just kind of globbing big globs on your canvas, if that seems a little overwhelming, understandable. You can mix it to make it this consistency over here, and then do what I'm gonna show you. So this is okay. So when you buy IKEA furniture, it's packed with all of these various width packing things, and if you peel off the paper, there's just kind of paper that goes over it. You can see some paper remnants here. When you peel those off, it will give you this really amazing pattern that you get to play with. It's one of my favorite found stencils. You can take them and make them very long, and then, curl it around and make big curvy things, and it's just a very very fun, versatile stencil that I would recommend to anyone if you happen to intersect with IKEA in your life and are also interested in this. So I'm putting it down and moving it just a little bit. You can also put your hand on the back of the canvas to give it pressure, because sometimes just pushing it down will just push the whole canvas down and it won't really adhere enough color. So then we're gonna go over here where it's dry. Where it's dry, and then this one it's still kind of damp. And again, I have my hand on the back of the canvas there. And I'm even kind of rubbing it a bit to just sort of get that extra pressure to help the stamp be more effective. So this is, I think, just my absolute favorite random stencil buddy. But of course, there are more. This is just tissue paper. So I think this was just some packing material that I got from something. And so what I'm doing, I'm actually being kind of intentional in the sort of crumpled wad I'm making. So you can see the more that you let things, it's easy to just kind of go, slurp, slurp. Those are technical noises. And then you really don't have a lot of variation in depth. And if you don't have a variation in depth, you're not going to get very much texturally. That can be totally fine if that's, if that's what you're going for. Let me show you what I mean. So we'll dab this down, and then over here you can see, and this makes even kind of an interesting, like, ooh, I have a dog. I have a dog bed under my art table here, and my slipper got stuck in it. So this even makes kind of a fun flower pattern that you could build out. But that's when it's kind of flat, so not a lot of variation in the depth of the crinkles. And then so now, with kind of pushing it in on itself more in places and kind of allowing deeper folds, we have this much more chaotic surface. So, and this just ensures a more smooth, consistent sort of application. And then this gives me just different. So you have a little more intricate variation there than you have here, but you have much kind of broader spaces. But you get much more interesting sharp angles and stuff like that. So, it's just two different ways to play with the same thing. I'm going to add a little more water here, just because this area has kind of started to dry a little bit. And okay, bubble wrap. Love it. Again, you want, you're going to want your paint to be on the thicker side rather than the thinner side. Just because if the paint's too watery, it doesn't give you enough gap between the bubbles. So and this one you usually don't really need to press from the other side as much. But you can even see when you look, you can tell that the paint is bubbled up on the other side of the little bubble, and you can see where it's all smooshed. And for this, you may want to, depending on how well it's coming off. Nice. And let's see here. I also have paper towel. So this is old. Old. You may have noticed. This is used, but that's totally fine. So even though it's not absorbing paint anymore as my little helper, you can smoosh it up interestingly. And so I'm just adding a little more paint, and I'm thickening it up a little bit. I also really am enjoying this green contrast. So, and for this I do want to kind of have that pressure there because I'm wanting to get it so that I even get the texture of the paper towel. It has this interesting little little dot, fish scale, circle, grid kind of pattern. And since this is only the second layer of this painting, so much of this is just going to be covered up in some way by the end, and it will end up connected to something else that isn't, you know, really anything to do with anything else that's happening here. So if you're painting and you're a bit like, I don't know what any of this is going to be, what is it? You can let that go. I usually don't start looking for anything of interest or anything to kind of be something until at least 3 or 4 layers in, unless, you know, on a rare occasion there will be something that'll kind of really pop in like the second layer, but that's very rare. So just let it continue to be a fun place. You don't have to stress with unnecessary expectations. There's no reason for it to be anything. So, oh goodness, see? So I have more paint down here. So you can tell when you're painting that it's thicker. You have, you know, these you know, the buildup of paint here. It gives you those interesting, noticeable brush streaks. need to find a better sounding container. So then just by adding water in here, and then coming in with some paper towel, you can pick up bits of that. Now it will often pick up a bit of what was beneath it as well. Now it's more rough looking because it also took some of that pigment away. I really enjoy that though. I think it gives it a nice color variation. So it's great to work with, but you have to help, you know, allow yourself to release perfection, because perfection is just in enjoying it. So we'll let this dry. I hope that helped. If this is useful to you, please let me know in the comments, because I love making painting more accessible to people. Sorry, my throat is a little angry today. I love making painting accessible to people because I think it's such a beautiful and cathartic sort of just thing to have in your life. And it's truly available to everyone. So if this is helpful at all, please let me know. If you have more questions, leave them in the comments. It means the world to me to know that this is appreciated by anyone, so thank you.